Good evening, Razorback fans. Welcome to the Wednesday episode of Hawg Talk Podcast, presented to you by Vision Exteriors. Welcome to coming to you live from the Sterling Soap and Roastery Studios. We're part of the Believe and Buzz Radio Network, where you can hear us on 107 in Central Arkansas. All live shows are presented to you by Arkansas Brewing Company in downtown Ozark. I am Porter Hayes, and alongside me, as always, is Adam Hall. We're also brought to you by Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. NFL, college, Bet Online has every stat, matchup, and even live odds and spreads while you're playing the game. Think you know your stuff? Get in the winner-take-all 200,000 NFL Survivor Pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to the online casino and get on a game of blackjack, poker, or unwind in one of our over 150 slot games. And don't forget to use the promo code BLEAV for your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. A few days away from UAB. I wouldn't say it's a statement game, but I mean, it's a bounce back game. And pretty much like we talked about on the show on Saturday or Sunday, they pretty much got to handle this like they did against UAPB. But Coach Sam Pittman said today that Hudson Clark will be doubtful for Saturday's game, as well as Jalen Braxton is going to be questionable. Kudus is still out with his back injury, but the bright spot is Marquise Robinson started the season opener, but had a stinger during pregame warmups, didn't play against Oklahoma State. And Pittman said Robinson should be fine to play this weekend against the Blazers. So I guess a good week to, still have these questionables. And I know with how you're having to report these are differently. But again, UAB this Saturday, what is the biggest thing that you are looking forward to when it comes to this game? Or does this game even mean anything to you at all because of we know how Arkansas did against UAPB and then how they kind of fumbled the bag against Oklahoma State?
I think going into this game, obviously every game is important. I'm looking at this game as how do you bounce back from Oklahoma State? Have you maybe cleaned up some of the little, head mistakes that you had, the little things that ended up costing you more? I've heard Talon and Jaquindon earlier this week in interviews, that they're with it. They know what they needed to focus on. They're focusing on it. And those are things that you want to hear, but let's see it on the field. I know the line's gone from 22.5 to I think it was 24.5 earlier. So I'm still expecting a 35 plus point win. And that's, I don't feel like that's an overshot. I'm looking at UAB and their two games so far, and I just don't really see how they're going to be able to compete any closer than that. But really, it's just I want to see you clean up the mistakes that we saw against Oklahoma State. And I know things will be a little bit harder to tell when the competition isn't up there, but I think a lot of the fans will know, is Talon Green getting pressured? Is the offense, because Oklahoma State's obviously different than UAPB or UAB. But it's one of those things that is your line protecting? Are we holding on to the ball? Is Talon Green making quick decisions, or is he maybe holding on to? Just those things that end up adding up to more and more.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to judge this game off of what you can see with the opponent being UAB. You're talking about the decision-making checkdowns. I would, if I was Bobby Petrino, even if a guy is open or not, let's just be real. I think Arkansas is going to pass all over this team, but I would make him really make decisions. Is he going to be underthrowing guys? Is he going to be able to hit the wide open receiver? We're seeing, I think we know he's a freak athlete. If he has another video highlight like he did against UAPB, cool. That's cool for social media, but I want to see, like you said, pressure in the pocket. How does Arkansas keep rolling with this offensive line and running the ball? Because, and when it comes to UAB, they're not giving up that many yards on the ground. So I don't know how much weight that holds. But, if you look at the stats of UAB on the ground, they're averaging, they're giving up 163 yards per game on the ground. So I was actually looking at the passing yards. They're only averaging giving up 73. So whoever they've played's only passed for 147 yards against.
That's what I was actually just so Alcorn State was their first game and they won 41-3.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got beat by UL and Louisiana Monroe 32-6 week 2. So they had a complete night and day. So I'm looking at the Alcorn State specifically so I can see if we have some inflated, which all teams are going to have inflated stats at this point, this early in the year. But that game, total yards in their first game was 517 to 177.
Mm-hmm.
They had 60 yards passing. So a lot of your overall stats, just from those two games, they only gave up 60 yards passing in the first game. So I was looking at more when I was looking at Arkansas and UAB comparisons, I guess, specific individuals, their quarterback in 2 games, 45 of 64 for 382, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. And then they've got a running back that 29 carries, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. So, they've got one receiver that's got at 116 yards. So it's from seeing game 2 to game 1, the majority of their stats came from game 1.
Yes. And on the defensive side, you look at ULM had General Booty as their quarterback.
Oh, I forgot about him.
He only went 9 for 16 and 87 yards, but they did have 211 yards rushing on the ground with 2 touchdowns. So that is where, again, I feel very comfortable about, when it comes to Arkansas and, being able to run for, you're looking at averaging 255 a game on the ground. You've rushed for over 500 yards total, and you're only giving up 33 yards a game. That's huge. I don't care who you're playing against. You're averaging. You've only given up 66 total yards, and that's playing against one of the top running backs in the nation. So my biggest concern coming into this has been one of the bright spots is how well Arkansas has been able to run the ball and how their defensive line's being able to stop the run.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to come out focused. I think they need to handle this and blow this out of the water. But I really think that Taylon Green's got to be spot on with this passing. I think he's got to show growth because there was, Clint Stoner was talking about even in the UAPB game, he was seeing some hesitancy. And of course, you know how it is. You win 70-0 and everybody's like, well, how can you see this? And then Oklahoma State comes and you see it's right there. And then with the loss. So,
mm-hmm. Looking back at, or looking at this, I want to see more. It's hard to say that you want to see more pressure on the defensive line linebackers. While I say that is because it's not going to be like Oklahoma State. They're not going to be necessarily protecting their quarterback like Oklahoma State. And here's the thing with Oklahoma State too, going back and rewatching and talking to some folks and everything, I've heard that a lot about Arkansas didn't get to the quarterback and whatnot, but at the same time, Oklahoma State's quarterback was getting rid of the ball so quickly, whether it was on target or not. Our defensive linebacker, nobody had time to get to him. So it's like, we didn't have any sacks against Oklahoma State, but at the same time, he's dropping back 2 steps. He's getting rid of the ball. So, and I think, that's one thing that we noticed with him too, was when his passes were off, but he was just chunking it to get rid of it a lot of times. So you want to see the guys use this game as and I know we've said it before about Landon Jackson, you need those, sometimes you're going to need those stat padding games.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to have to come. I think the defense needs to come out because, when you look at, Sorey's been the story. Sorey and Metcalf, coming up and you look at how many tackles they've had, and Sorey's got 3 tackles for loss for a total of 12 yards. But that's where those numbers even should be inflated because of the fact that, you're looking at a total, and let me look at total. you're looking at a total of 13 tackles for loss for a total of 50 yards. So, I mean, I'm just looking at both games. I think that should be more because, yeah, you stepped up and you stuffed Gordon a lot, but you're going to have to, I would say, get 8 to 10 against UAB. I mean, they need to really come firing. Landon Jackson only got 3 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. So, you just look at what this defense needs to do. I can't remember if it was Steve Sullivan was talking about the leadership of Clark out there on defense. All right. If he's out, who's going to be that guy in the secondary that steps up and becomes that leader? So that's another thing I want to look at, leadership. Who's going to really step up and control that defense?
That's one thing. I mean, I'd like to see some of the younger guys. Well, I say that. If they're getting to a point that they're having to decide on, are we taking red shirts away or not, or giving red shirts? Yeah. I don't want to deal with that. But I'd like to see some of the younger guys. But then again, hey, let's see what Marquise Robinson has coming back. Let's see Singletary. Let's see some of these other guys who have made a little bit of noise when you're, we'll say, new to the team. In a bit, you don't have necessarily that guy who has been maybe a locker room leader or a vocal leader on the field. Let's see some of the other guys step up and do it and fill those spots. Which I know, Xavion Story's been here for a year, but like let's see some of these other newer faces step up in front versus the guys who have maybe been here for a few years.
Yeah, and Logan brings up, Eric Gregory. I mean, 4 total tackles, a sack, and so 1.5 tackles for loss per 7 total yards, and then 1 sack for 6 yards. So yes, that has been huge when it comes to the depth. Now we say depth now 2 games in. Where does that go? Because look, and another thing is, how long do you keep the starters out there? How much rest do you give them, but still keep them honed in? Because you look at the upcoming schedule that you have. I mean, it's not as brutal as we thought. And I think a lot of that falls on the Cal loss, but just how bad Auburn beat you. Then you got your, of course, big monkey off the bat game against Texas A&M. And then you got Tennessee, LSU. Then you get Mississippi State. Then you get Ole Miss back and Texas back to back. So you really have to. I mean, you got 2 games right there in a row, Ole Miss and Texas, that I don't see them winning. I mean, they're going to have to play lights out like Bama and not piss the game away to win either one of those games. And with their questions in the secondary and how well Ole Miss and Texas is looking passing the ball, I don't know if you really watched much of that Texas game against Michigan, but I mean, Michigan's overrated. Don't get me wrong, but both of those teams really, really impressed me on how well they're doing so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, looking ahead, I don't think anybody will necessarily disagree with this, and if you do, so be it. But Ole Miss and Texas, I mean, just go ahead and chalk it up. I said before the season that even if you still had the 4-team playoff, if it wasn't a 12-team playoff, Ole Miss could be a CFP team. Yeah. Ole Miss is that good, and I think that Lane Kiffin is out to. This is kind of his. I'm not going to say revenge tour because nothing really to it, But I'm looking at this as he's playing for his dad. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder, and I think Lane Kiffin's going to go all out, and so it just helps them a bit more now that you got 12 teams to guarantee your spot. But it's those 2 games I think are just too tough. I mean, I look at Texas as being better this year than they were last year. Yeah, they've improved. I mean, you got Ewers that's in there, for another year, and they've just grown. Sarkisian has done a good job, which I know previously I've knocked on Steve Sarkisian, but the fact is he's got a good team. He's a good coach, and he also has the name Texas above him, so that anybody that walks through there is going to get the talent. It's just you have a decent enough coach to do anything with it. Versus your other teams who have to fight and claw for every little bit that they get. But Texas A&M, I think this is the year, like you're saying, getting the monkey off the back. Auburn, I'm looking at that like be your revenge game for getting embarrassed by them last. I mean, what was it, 30-something point loss last year to them?
46-3, wasn't it? Something
ridiculous. So we know that Jordan Hare is a tough place to play for anybody, unless you're Cal, I guess. If it was that a home game for Auburn, I don't even know if it was a home game for Auburn.
Yeah, but it was in Jordan Hare.
Okay, so go in, smack Auburn in the mouth, but I don't think you can look too far ahead at this point. You've got to focus on Auburn, and then focus on Texas A&M.
Yeah, and perfect. I mean, yeah, you cannot sit there and look ahead. I mean, look, after this game, there's no game you can look ahead, because again, when you're 4-8, yes, you're a different team, but you can't afford to, because you got to take. You can't take, because look how everybody and myself, look how we looked at that UAPB game. We were like, man, we can go in, and they should have won the game. Let's not get that part twisted. Arkansas should have won that game. They pissed it down their leg, did too many mistakes. If they don't do the mistakes they had, they win the game. But when you look at the Auburn game, I mean, you have to really hone in. I'm looking at the Auburn stats right now. Cal, and then this is what's crazy. Cal only had 233. They had 233 passing, and they only had 99 yards rushing. So they didn't have it was like a Big Ten game. It really was. Auburn had 286 total yards, 165 passing, and 121 on the ground. So that's where I look at that and say, look, if they can really cut that down, they have a chance. But I also said, shit, if you hold Ollie Gordon to 46 yards rushing and they lose the game. I mean, everything points to, I think it was James Bryant put out there that teams that scored over or had over 500 yards of offense.
Yeah, it was teams that outgained their opponent by 200 yards, gained over 500 yards of offense. Like the average score was 53-15, and games were 337-1 since 2020. And Arkansas is that one. And then prior to that, Miami had done it in 2019. But, and then looking at it too, like he's using like the over 500 yards, whatever. We were almost outgained him by 300 yards because we had over 640 yards of offense.
Yeah. That's where, I mean, this team can, and again, you chalk up those Ole Miss, Texas back-to-back. I mean, but how do you come out of that? If say you do drop them, it's how you drop them and how you bounce back. I'm looking really at this UAB game. I want to see improvement, but I'm going to take nothing away from the win because I expect them to. And somebody was talking about you being a little rough on the team and your prediction. And I was pointing out, like, they're a 7-5 team. I'm going to grade them like they're a 7-5 team. If you're having them at 3-9, you're going to grade them like they're a 3-9 team, because even with the loss to Oklahoma State, you're like, okay, this team could still win a couple of games that I didn't think. So that's the main thing with this team, is because they let us down. Everybody is hyped up after the UAPB game, thinking they're going to, and then you're up 21-7. I mean, I almost was like, hey, look, man, how you feel? I was almost even going to text you and be like, how are you feeling? Like, this is impressive. They're stuffing the run. And then something just told me not to, and we seen why.
Well, I mean, even going back to, because I mean, you're not the only. There's been other people that's like, what we talked about before the last game. Where would I be at with if Arkansas won? And granted, this is beforehand. Like, where would I be at with my predictions? And yeah, I would be willing to would have been willing to bump up to, okay, if I go back and relook at this after this, yeah, I could look at this being a 6-6. If I, whether between 5-7, 7-5, 6-6. At the same time, even with the loss and what we saw, I can still see better than 3-9. Those predictions came out because of a salty pettiness that I'm standing on. But at the same time, it's like we talked about in the record preview or the prediction preview show, like I still talked about those games that could swing either way. Like, yes, I picked a loss, But at the same time, these are the games and these are how and why we could win these games. I could be wrong. I'm completely fine with that. But, and we both talked about this. Oklahoma State, and you especially touched on it, was if Arkansas did lose, the biggest thing was how do you bounce back against UAB? Mm-hmm. And so that's where we are at, is how do you bounce back from it? How do you prepare? Do you clean those things up? And, they lost, and you were like talking about too, how did you lose? Did you lose close? Did you get blown out? So, we saw that it was mental mistakes, the majority of it. So it's one of those things that come smack somebody in the mouth Saturday. Be pissed off. That's what they need to do.
Yeah. And I know you can run all over this team. Look, if you can run all over UAPB, you can run all over Oklahoma State. You're going to be able to run all over. Now, you still want to be balanced. You still want to get Jackson touches, but I think you really, really, really got to take this game to focus on those things that Green needs to fix in the passing game. I think you key this play calling and this game plan towards that, because that's going to be important to give him that confidence of passing the ball. Again, now if he starts taking off and he's running and he has over 100 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, that's awesome. But in the grand scheme of me, that means nothing to me. I want to see what he does through the air against this defense to carry over, hopefully start seeing some bright spots. And look, maybe this loss was a good thing for them, because we're going to see the fact that, let's see what happens when this fire's lit. Let's see when people are going to start talking about Singleton, or they're going to start talking about his inconsistencies. Let's see how that goes. And going into the Auburn game, I judge this off a 7-5 team, but Auburn's a must-win game. If it holds true to my record, if I'm going to say this team is a 7-5 team, and I told you on Sunday, where do they got to replace that win? They have to replace it against Auburn, because it's a beatable team. Now, if Auburn rolled Cal, if Auburn rolled them and they were just looking like this well-oiled machine, I would have a different take. But seeing how poorly they played against Cal at home, look, that's the home opener for them. That's their opener. You're supposed to come out fired up and ready to go. So this is dress rehearsal for Auburn. I want to see another win. And I was going to bring a point, you're talking about how you judge the record. I mean, you're a fan. You want to be wrong about this because you're tired of being let down. I think you speak for a majority of the fan base, how they really feel. Now, there's going to be those fans that are diehards that are like, look, we're going to be bowl eligible. We're going to do this. But then you have that second tier fan that is like, okay, I'm tired of being let down. Until they prove to me they can put a winning season together, then I'm going to hold them to that. So,
and it's all about your approach too, like on the judgment, the comments, the posts, the whatever it is. Because it's like, I can talk about these things and what I think, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily like just talking crap on the team or either side of the ball or whatever. It's like, hey, this is why I did this. But at the same time, like, here's where they can prove me wrong. Here's what I want to see. Like I've said, I will be glad to eat crow. But, like you've said, this is a game now that against Auburn that you're going to have to win. You have to replace that Oklahoma State loss with another win. But then I didn't comment on it, but I saw it in the comments when you had talked about like who or, the starters, what we want to see in the game. And I haven't touched on it, but, I want to see the guys that need the work when it comes to their stamina, staying in, not getting out. Like, I want to see those guys as long as possible. But at the same time, I want to see Talon Green in there for the majority of the time, because I want to see his accuracy. I want to see his decision making. I want to see those things. But at the same time, I'm thinking like I want to see a lot of Malachi Singleton in the second half. But I want to see him with some of the ones. I don't want to see him necessarily with the second team. And I think this is a situation that you get in that maybe you put in some of your younger linemen later in the game, get them some reps, get some of these second team guys in there. Because every time somebody goes out, we start shuffling 2, 3, 4 players on the offensive line rather than just having one guy to plug in. And I think that's where it throws off a lot of the offensive line and the offensive line to the backfield. is when you start shuffling around 3, 4, 5 guys. One guy goes out, have one guy to replace him. Stop all the musical chairs with everybody.
Yeah, and bringing in singles in one, it means the game's in hand. You want to bring, but I mean, to your point, I mean, yes, I would love to see him throw with some of the ones. Get in with Jackson. We talk about reps, but you got to, and Green's got to take that as, okay, we're going to see what he does. Take that and grow from it. Take that and not get butthurt about it. Take that and be like, okay, we're trying to develop depth. We need depth. Because look, he could get hurt on an Auburn game, or he could get hurt in the Ole Miss game. And then you've got to bring somebody in who doesn't know really, comfortable in the game setting of handing the ball off to Jackson or throwing to Armstrong or whoever. But yes, those are great points on this game. And hopefully, when we come on Sunday, we're going to talk about the win. We're going to talk about what we've seen. I know we are. It's just how much improvement. But before we had to break, I know we announced yesterday that we are having a collaboration with a couple of content creators and, KFSM weatherman Scott Covert, along with All About Arkansas. And we really want to take this time to really kind of explain what this is going to be. This is going to be a weekly show, 25, 30 minutes long on Thursdays, that we're going to combine voices. We're going to bring you sports, travel, and weather all across the state of Arkansas. We're going to give you updates on all the Razorback scores, all sports, all the programs, games coming up in the weekend ahead. Arkansas is going to promote all the great spots in the state of Arkansas, where to go to this weekend, where's the festivals. And then Scott, of course, during the broadcast, is going to give a 7-day outlook on the weather. And then we're also going to have a graphic that has the weekend in sports, a condensed version of what we're doing. But I'm very excited about this kicking off. I'm very excited to see where this goes. Adam, I don't see anybody else has done this yet, so I'm really anxious to see where this goes, but we're going to bring this to you once a week. It's going to be shared on all of our platforms. It's not just going to be live here on Facebook, Instagram. We're going to record it, put it together. All About Arkansas on her platform. Scott Covert's going to share his on his, and then we're going to have ours on ours. But Adam, I'm really stoked about this.
It's something that we hadn't really seen in this aspect of things. Of course, we've all seen the news time and time again, but it's your news without the news.
Yep.
This is something that everybody, I feel like, at some point has something that they want to grasp here, they want to see, or just a basic rundown of what's going on, maybe in their part of the state and with the Razorbacks, and they've got a free time this weekend and they're wanting to do something else, and they want to know. I mean, there's a whole lot that could come from this, and I'm interested to see where it goes.
Now, well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. After the break, we're going to bring in Dr. Jay Geoghagan from Baptist Health, cardiologist, to talk about heart health, talk about Razorbacks. It's going to be an interesting side story of how he became a Razorback fan and still is. So we'll do that after the break. We'll be right back. Looking to enhance your home's curb appeal? Look no further than Vision Exteriors. As your trusted roofing, siding, and exterior experts, we're here to transform your property. Our skilled team ensures your job is not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. Along with roofing, we also offer window, gutter, and siding insulation to boost your home's appearance with our quality options. Visit us at www.visionexteriors.com or call us at 479-397-4770. Let's make your vision a reality. Discover Wellness at Baptist Health. As Arkansas's largest and most comprehensive not-for-profit healthcare organization, we're here for you every step of your journey. Whether you need heart health services, orthopedics, or simply want to live well, Baptist Health has you covered. Visit us at 1001 Towson Avenue in Fort Smith or at one of our 250 points of contact all over the great state of Arkansas. From urgent care centers, senior living, to our primary and specialty care clinics, Baptist Health, for you, for life. Are you looking for your dream home in the heart of the Ozarks? Look no further than Hillbilly Realty. Located at 401 West Commercial Street in Ozark, Arkansas, our experienced team of professionals is dedicated to help you in finding the perfect property. Whether you're buying or selling, we're here for you with a commitment to excellence, customer service, and local expertise. We make the real estate process seamless. Call Bill Brockett today and team at 667-4135 to start your journey with Hillbilly Realty, where every property feels like home. Welcome to Vulcan Sporting Goods, your premium pickleball supply company right here in Hot Springs, Arkansas. Explore our premium pickleball equipment featuring pro endorsed gear and accessories. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting, Vulcan has something for you. In pickleball gear, you can discover a collision of style, athleticism, and technology with our durable products. Excellence meets innovation at Vulcan Sporting Goods. Visit our website at www.vulcansportinggoods.com to explore our collections and stay updated on the latest highlights by following Vulcan Pickleball on social media. And welcome back to the Hawg Talk Podcast. And we bring you Dr. Jay Geoghagan, courtesy of the Meadows Lumber Hotline, to talk some heart health, Razorbacks. I see you got the Razorback stuff in the background. Really appreciate you coming on to talk to us.
Porter, I thank you for the opportunity and enjoy your show. And, we get to talk about a lot of things we like, to include sports, hog sports especially, and cardiology in my case.
And so let's talk about your background. Just talk about you. What got you into medicine? What got you into being a Razorback fan? Just give us a little background.
Well, I grew up in Arkansas. I grew up in a small town called Marshall in north central Arkansas. Moved to Conway for high school, finished there, went to college at the University of Arkansas. My father played for Coach Broyles in the late 60s. So we started going to ball games as young as I can remember. Was always a fan, enjoyed the trip to Fayetteville and to Little Rock. Went to medical school at UAMS, joined the Air Force, spent 10 years as a doctor in the Air Force, dealt with a lot of athletes and athletic type folks there. Moved back here and have been back here for 17 years practicing cardiology. And over the last few years, we've kind of transitioned and opened up a sports cardiology clinic inside of our existing practice. And this is an emerging specialty in cardiology that really focuses on the needs of athletes, but also just everyday people who are engaged in exercise, whether it's bicycle clubs or marathon runners or half marathon runners or pickleball players. And so with all of the high profile cases in the last few years, Damar Hamlin, Bronny James, this has really become a much more active and alive specialty. And the need was here and it wasn't really being met in Arkansas. So we are now proud to offer services geared towards athletes.
And, we've talked to a couple of providers on our shows, and the consensus of when we're talking about high school sports and sports in Arkansas, and with the AAA making these regulations and making these protocols, again, how well does that make it your job easier knowing, okay, this is the guidelines that coaches, players, parents have to be involved in, and what measures have you taken to really get the coaches and parents involved in the decision-making of what's best for the player, but yet at the same time, getting that feedback from the coaches and the parents as well?
Well, Arkansas is very fortunate through the actions of a lot of concerned individuals, parents, and the legislature. We're one of the few states that have implemented all of the recommended guidelines to help deal with any sudden cardiac events in athletes. And as early as 2 years ago, there were only 7 states who had enacted all of these. Arkansas was one of them. It's now up over 20, but this includes CPR training for coaches, for staff. This includes having an automated external defibrillator close by with the training to use it, not just off in a hallway in somebody's desk in the school. It also includes a written emergency action plan. And so these processes have shown nationwide to be the primary things that help save lives. And again, when you look at the success stories, whether it be international athletes, D1 athletes, or even high school athletes, it is quick, prompt action, often by bystanders, that help save lives. And by enacting these protocols, the parents and athletes in Arkansas can feel like, hey, we really are at a state level doing everything we can to try to keep everybody safe.
And what is the benefits? You talk about the AED on the sidelines and coaches. I mean, when you're talking about a kid goes down, and look, let's be real. I think we've all in some way witnessed that in any kind of sporting event. whether it be any kind of injury, you know, those heartbreaking moments, that the pause in the crowd waiting for that ambulance to come out. Just again, for the viewers, just really stress how important that is to have the coaches be certified, having the when it comes to the reaction time. And, you know, we're talking about life-saving measures that now from the top to bottom, this isn't just something that the top schools and the best schools are getting. This is 7A all the way down to 8-man. What are you seeing out of the benefits of from the coaches and these parents that starting over the last couple of years, you know, let's be honest with the football side of it, you know, they're leaning more and more away from having their kids play football, whether it be CTE, concussions, injuries, and what's not.
And, you know, that's been making a lot of the headlines. And I think that it is something that we have to think about in the bigger picture, because obviously when we were younger, football was often a bigger part of our lives. And now there are a lot of competing interests and other things that kids are involved in. And most sports injuries are related to orthopedic conditions. And that, thankfully, cardiovascular issues in sports are very rare. But when they happen, they're frightening, they're terrifying, they're life-threatening. And so I think the main thing is giving trainers, coaches, even fans and parents the tools. And so CPR training is so important. And for years now, the American Heart Association has really pushed bystander CPR, even without mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, just doing chest compressions that are effective, because this can be life-saving. AEDs are everywhere. They're at church, they're in restaurants, they're in all these sporting events. The problem is that you need to know how to use them. And so if you take a basic life support class, you're going to learn how to use an AED. And they're very simple to use, but people are afraid of them. They're often afraid of messing up. And I often tell my patients and their families that if someone goes down from a cardiac arrest, that person is dying in front of you. You can only help them. And so by taking action, not being paralyzed by the fear, not taking your phone out and filming it, but actually jumping in and getting involved. Someone should call 911 immediately, and then someone should be doing chest compressions, someone else assessing the scene, looking for an AED, and all of this. And thankfully, the Arkansas Activities Association has really taken the lead here. We have word out to all athletic directors, all the trainers in the state. They're all up on these emergency action plans and the AED usage. And the challenge, like you said, is practicing it. And so it's one of those things that we then want to get out to people and say, hey, just like we have fire drills, just like we have tornado drills, we need to have cardiac arrest drills. We need to have people going down knowing how to use the equipment, because again, it is good to know that it's there, but when that moment happens, you've got to jump into action. And I think the nice thing is that with, again, some of these high profile events, we've seen on television people jumping into action very quickly. And hopefully this will also spur this on.
And another thing, you were talking about the AED, you know, you see the people on TV and they bring it out, and the shock value, you were seeing somebody and then you charge it up and you see them really, their bodies react to it, you know, getting somebody to go in and really be cool, calm, and collected for really. And I know if they do get to y'all, I mean, somebody's already started CPR, somebody's already been trying to treat, they're not getting, you know, to your department or your hospital, your facility at square one. So I know that has to really make y'all's job better when it comes to this, but also, you know, we're dealing with, you know, a lot of heart issues and whatever the case may be. But, you know, I didn't have a can on me, but I was going to ask you, you know, when you see an energy drink and you see just the Bangs and the Monsters and the Red Bulls, I mean, I know that probably has to make you cringe seeing these 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds and 60-year-olds drink these 2 or 3 a day, and they don't realize, you know, what kind of stress. And look, I raise my hand. I'm one of those that I drink 2 a day, you know. So really, from your standpoint, kind of just talk to me and our listeners about the stress that things like that puts on these kids, and going out there and playing these sports in the heat, or even if it's not too hot, it's still humid. It just what that stress puts on their heart, and the contributing factors to these recent, you know, increases of these heart conditions that you're seeing.
Well, I think one of the major changes that has come around since I played sports in junior high and high school is that we now understand the importance of hydration. Water breaks were few and far between early on when I was playing, and now this is something that is well understood. And that thankfully there's a lot of good information out there. A lot of these kids are training in the off season. They're dedicated to their sport. They're really trying. But you're right. The problem that I have with energy drinks is there's so much sugar in them that most anybody that's not a teenager who's exercising every day, we don't need all that sugar. We're just going to turn it into fat cells. The amount of caffeine can be a major stimulant issue for some people. And the vast majority of young kids are going to be able to get away with this because when you're young and healthy, you've got so much wiggle room to deal with. It's the older folks, the folks in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s. And that brings up the challenge for doing exercise and sports cardiology in older adults is that a lot of times our younger habits catch up to us. So the people who smoked for 10 years and quit, it's so great that they've quit, but you sometimes will have to pay for some of that. Your family history of heart problems, the bad diet, the lack of exercise. And so it's so very important to try to establish these healthy habits in younger years so that they will maintain as people get older, because it is so much harder to keep it going. But it's never too late to start. And so stopping the bad habits, the lifestyle changes, the diet, the exercise, and working on your own health helps you to appreciate this. Again, with regards to the kids, whether they be high school athletes or just recreational athletes, it's all about having the plan. And for so many people, we encourage them, again, learn CPR. When you talk to these national experts who deal with some of these very high profile athletes, they have their own AED with them. Their family has all been taught CPR. They all know how to do it. And so if there is a parent out there who's worried about a cardiac condition in their kids, or if they've been diagnosed with something, but they've been allowed to return to play, it's all about being prepared, always being sure that you're ready to jump into action and not just rely on, hopefully, the experts that are around. As you said earlier, I'm not usually the one that's there on the sideline. It's those trainers, it's those first responders. People are usually seeing me the next week when there's a problem, hopefully in the office and not in the intensive care unit. And it is, again, about that first response that is so very important.
And we've talked about the treatments. We've talked about just how important all this is, but the training and warning signs. Because look, kids are not always forthcoming when it comes to being an athlete and saying something, or even if you're not an athlete, you're just not always forthcoming about symptoms and how long. So, what are some really warning signs that parents, even coaches and players? I mean, players might not even know anything's wrong. What are some warning signs that you can see some onset conditionings happening to really educate them to be looking out for and get them checked out? Better safe than sorry, but just highlight a few warning signs that we can look out for.
Well, you make a good point in the fact that an athlete, whether they be a competitive athlete on a team, or whether they're just a competitive athlete who's aging, or even what we call tactical athletes, so firefighters, police officers, first responders, they're driven by something, whether it's their duty, their job, or just their desire to compete. And so they are going to try to overlook. Athletes are conditioned to, work through the pain and push through it. But the main things that we tell people, if you ever pass out during an athletic event, that's a warning sign. That shouldn't happen. Chest pain, especially that comes on with exertion, is a warning sign. And we've all had the issue of doing too many push-ups and getting a little bit of chest pain, or you take a helmet to the head, or you get the wind knocked out of you. Those things happen. But chest pain that comes on and is provoked by your own activity has to be a warning sign. Any shortness of breath that is new and is simply not just that you're out of shape. And so if you've got a person who's been through conditioning, they've been in good shape, and suddenly they're experiencing these symptoms. Lastly would be a sensation of a racing heart rate that has no good explanation for being there. Those are the main ones that we look for. They should prompt cessation of whatever activity you're doing and quick assessment. Many times they're going to resolve on their own, and certainly if this is a recurrent condition, it needs to be checked out.
And we'll flip sides to the sports side of it. You being a Hawg fan all your life, having a father who's played for the Razorbacks. Just first of all, how cool was that? Like to have a dad that played for Broyles. You have seen and heard it all the way from the glory days of the Broyles days until now. So just talk about the early days of you becoming a fan, and then we can kind of talk about the other side of it too. But just really talk about that aspect of it.
I think some of my earliest memories are having the red Hawg helmet on, having the little footballs like the cheerleaders used to throw out. And the first game I really remember paying attention to was that 78 Orange Bowl, and for whatever reason, that's the game that sticks in my mind as remembering. And then after that, we started going to games. It was a great feeling to wear my dad's jersey to games, to have this antique, as it were, Hawg hat that oftentimes I was offered extreme amounts of money for whenever fans would recognize that, hey, that's not one that you can buy now. And I've still got it up behind me up here. And so those things were so great, seeing my dad's name on the Letterman plaques at the stadium. And then just coming through high school, playing football, going up to games on Saturday. I missed the Saturday afternoon games where you could drive up, see the game, get home, and you didn't have to get up so early or weren't up so late. I missed those days. And then coming into college, being a Razorback fan, and I was there when we moved to the SEC. I was in the stands for the Citadel loss. I mean, I have seen the great teams we had before that, and then some of the down times, and then come back through. And so it's been such a roller coaster ride, and I feel sorry for people, my children's age, who've never really experienced a great Arkansas team. There was a few years there when Petrino was coached the first time, and we had some good teams, but they've never really had that sustained excellence like we did and we enjoyed. And also on the basketball court, the same thing. And everybody takes track for granted. We're starting to take baseball for granted, but a Razorback fan is a great thing to be. And it's been tough lately, and it's been challenging because I often remember Danny Ford's coaches shows where he referred to players by numbers because for a while he struggled with names. And sometimes I feel like that when I'm watching the game now because the transfer portal has so totally changed everything. And I think for me, what I'm always looking for now is execution, and I've heard the debates on shows like yours about, is it the coaching? Is it the playing? In my mind, it's the coaches have to come up with a game plan. They have to implement that, and then the players have to execute. And in the world of NIL, they're professionals now, as far as I'm concerned, and I want to see them execute. I want to see them working at it, and I worry about the coachability of players now. And in the past, someone came in, it was an opportunity that they were looking for, and they were trying to impress and working, and oftentimes were there. Now, some of these players have been told how wonderful they are from Pee Wee football on up. And if they're not happy with their current situation, they can change it before too long. And so there's not as much loyalty to it. And, I'm still in that generation that I love that helmet. I wanted more than anything to run out of that World's complex and run through that A. I just wasn't quite up to that skill level to be that type of athlete. And so I think that for me as a Hawg fan, it's just the roller coaster that's tough. And as I'm getting older, I'm learning, unfortunately, to kind of temper my enthusiasm with a little bit of my brain. And unfortunately, that makes me sound pessimistic sometimes these days. And so heartbroken over the Oklahoma State game. So many, woulda, couldas, but it's really now just about, can they put it behind them, put the game plan in, and then go out and execute? Because if they can execute, they're going to win. And hopefully we'll pick up some wins that we didn't expect, but overall we're going to grow as a team and establish a better culture.
And we'll end on this, you being a now Central Arkansas guy, what is your thoughts, the whole Little Rock debate, you talking about being able to enjoy those games. And look, I'll tell you what, those LSU games in Little Rock, one of the greatest memories of Razorback fans in Central Arkansas and overall is Razorback. So, what's your take on seeing fewer and fewer games and the potential of no more games in Little Rock? Talk about those Central Arkansas fans and the ones that it's just not so easy to get up to Fayetteville. But is there also that understanding of where we are in college athletics and the money? And NIL and more from, donors. Where do you stand on that?
I think when I was younger and we did the 3 and the 4 game alternating years, used to love those night games in War Memorial because that wasn't an option that we had in Fayetteville. And it was harder to drive to Fayetteville back then. And so now the trip is easier. Ever since I've been in college, I've really been a proponent of playing all the games at the home site and obviously recognizing the challenges that brings with recruiting. And I think just that when you look at it, we have such potential to have one of the greatest game day experiences in Fayetteville. Absolutely, War Memorial was great at night, especially if you could tailgate on the golf course all day before that. And I have had, so many friends and folks that I've known who are from South Arkansas who talk about that difficulty to the drive to Fayetteville. But what I know is that if the team is winning and playing hard, people follow them. We'll go anywhere. We'll go to Hawaii. We'll go to Alaska. We'll go all the way to Gainesville, Florida. We'll do anything. And so I think that winning is going to cure this. Having a culture of competitiveness and of teams that are really putting forth their best effort. I think that unfortunately the experience in War Memorial has really kind of lacked over the years, and I think it would require a major investment to get that back to where it was. And I miss those days, but I really truly believe that the future is to have all the games on campus, and I'm in support of that.
Well, Dr. Geoghagan, I really appreciate your time for coming on. I've told all the providers I really love that, we're able to partner up and do this thing and not only just talk about your practice, but, we got a lot of us guys, we're sports fans. Even if you're not a Razorback fan, there's sports involved somewhere. We've had a lot of team doctors on. So it's been a really cool deal to be able to talk to y'all and get the insight.
Well, we appreciate it. And again, we're available for anyone high school age and up, be they athlete or just active person who is having symptoms or even looking to improve their performance. We can provide testing to evaluate people's oxygen consumption, their overall exercise capacity. We can give them instructions on how to improve this. And it doesn't matter if you're 19 or 90, we can help. Our website is arcardsports.com. You can also call 501-975-7676, which is our principal office in North Little Rock, and click on option number 7 and get directly to our staff and give us a call. We're happy to help and move forward and help people either improve their performance or get people back to performing and back in the game.
And as we end this show, today is September 11th. People of my age, I'm one of the few moments where the world stopped. We knew exactly where we were during that day. We are going to end the show a little differently. First of all, I want to thank all of our sponsors, Believe, Buzz Radio Network, but we're going to end our show with the 2001 commercial, Budweiser commercial. It was only aired once during the Super Bowl, so I do apologize for the quality. Some who are seeing this might not used to be able to see something pre-HD or 4K, but we're going to end the show with this commercial, but we'll come back to you on Sunday night. We thank you for tuning in.